Picture this. It's the height of summer. You walk out to your garden in the morning while the light is still low and golden, and every plant is loaded. Clusters of red and orange hanging heavy off the vines. Fruit so ripe it barely needs picking. It practically falls into your hands. Your kitchen bench has more tomatoes than you can deal with, and there are still dozens more coming. That is the season you deserve. That is what a correctly planted tomato garden looks like at its best. But here's the problem most gardeners never figure out. They pick varieties that take 90, 100, even 120 days to ripen. They plant in spring, wait all summer, and by the time anything is actually producing, the season is already halfway gone. They get a few weeks of harvest, maybe a month, and then the cold comes back and it's over. They spend the whole summer waiting. And then they do it again next year. There is a better way. 11 varieties, planted this April, that break that cycle entirely. These aren't slow-burn varieties you have to be patient with. These are fast. Genuinely fast. Some of them are ripe in under 50 days. Planted now in April, while the season is still opening up in front of you, they change everything. More weeks of harvest, more fruit, more of those mornings where the plants are loaded and you have nowhere to put it all. April is the window. Right now is when this matters. Every week you wait is a week of harvest you will never get back. Stay with me, because these 11 varieties are about to transform your season. Now, before we get into the list, I want to address something. The phrase all year round in the title. If you grow outdoors, you heard that and probably thought, hold on, that's not possible. And you're right that no single variety fruits year-round in most climates. But that's not what this system does. What it does is this. Stagger your planting across these 11 varieties, some of which ripen in under 50 days, some in 60, some that keep producing through late autumn, and you create a rolling harvest that starts in early summer and runs all the way to first frost. Early summer, midsummer, late summer, early autumn, right up until the cold shuts it down. That is a harvest window that most gardeners never get close to achieving. Most people get 6 or 8 weeks of fruit. This approach gets you 5-6 months of production from a single April planting. That is what all year round means here. Not magic, a system, and it works. I've spent years trialing early varieties, in cold springs, in short seasons, in containers on patios, and in full raised beds, figuring out which ones actually deliver on their days to maturity promises, and which ones are all marketing. The research behind this list goes deep. Breeding origins, horticultural trial data, grower reports from the US, Canada, and the UK. For every variety I'm about to cover, you're getting 3 things: exactly how fast it is, exactly what it needs to thrive, and the one mistake that quietly kills it for most gardeners who grow it. Most people never know about that last part until it's too late. 11 varieties. Let's go. The first one on the list barely looks like what most people picture when they think of a tomato. Subarctic Plenty. It gives you small, round, deeply red fruits, about 2 ounces each, that grow in dense clusters, stacked so tightly on the plant it looks almost absurd, like the vine can barely hold them all. This is not a showpiece tomato. It is a producing machine. Here's why it earns the top spot. 42 to 45 days to maturity. Let that sink in. Most fast varieties clock in at 60 days and call themselves early. This one is ripe in 6 weeks from transplant. An April planting gives you your first harvest in late May or very early June, before a lot of gardeners have even finished planting. It was bred at the Beaver Lodge Research Station in Alberta, Canada, in the 1970s, designed specifically for the punishing short-growing seasons of northern Canada, places where you might have 10 weeks of real summer if you're lucky. When a variety is bred to produce fruit in that window, 42 days isn't a marketing claim. It's a survival mechanism. Subarctic Plenty is determinate, which means it grows to a compact, manageable size, sets all its fruit over a concentrated period, and doesn't need staking. It handles containers. Sun requirement is full sun, at least 6 hours, ideally 8. Water consistently once established. This variety does not like to dry out completely between drinks, but it also doesn't need to be babied. The mistake that gets most people with this variety is nitrogen. Specifically, too much of it. Gardeners see a compact plant and think it needs feeding up, so they hit it with a high nitrogen fertilizer. What happens is exactly the wrong thing. The plant puts all its energy into producing lush, dark green foliage and dramatically reduces its fruit set. You end up with a beautiful bush and almost nothing to eat. The rule with subarctic plenty: keep nitrogen low once the plant is established and in the ground. Switch to a potassium-rich feed when flowering starts to push the fruit, not the leaves. Drop a comment below. Where are you growing this season? Tell me your state, your zone, or your country. I want to know where this list is landing. Next is Glacier, and this is a variety that looks unremarkable on paper until you understand the conditions it was built for. Small to medium fruits, orangey red, globe-shaped, nothing about the appearance that immediately grabs you. But Glacier sets fruit at lower temperatures than almost anything else you can grow. Not just cool, genuinely cold. We're talking about a variety that was developed in Sweden in 1985 and then popularized by a horticulture teacher in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, who used it specifically because it kept producing when other varieties sulked and stalled. That cold climate breeding is the whole story with this one. 55 to 60 days to maturity. From an April transplant, you're eating Glacier tomatoes in June. And critically, if your spring turns cold again, as springs often do, Glacier keeps going. Most varieties drop their blossoms when night temperatures plunge. Glacier does not. It was literally selected for low-temperature fruit set. That characteristic alone makes it worth growing as insurance, even if you're also growing faster varieties alongside it. It's determinate, compact, and very happy in a 5-gallon minimum container, which makes it excellent for patios and balconies. Full sun. Consistent watering. That last point is the mistake. Uneven watering causes Glacier's fruits to split. It's not a catastrophic flaw, but it's consistent. Gardeners who water intermittently or let the soil dry out and then drench it end up with split fruits right as they're ripening. The fix is simple. Establish a watering rhythm and hold it. A moisture meter takes all the guesswork out of it. Once you're consistent, Glacier delivers reliably and well. The next variety on this list has a story that goes back to communist-era Czechoslovakia. And it's one of the most productive early tomatoes you will ever grow. Stay with me. Stupice. Pronounced Stupice, and that origin matters. This heirloom was developed in the 1950s at an agricultural station near Prague, in what was then Czechoslovakia, by a plant breeder named Jaroslav Homola. The summers in Bohemia are short and unpredictable. Stupice was bred to produce reliably in exactly that kind of climate. And it does. It is a potato-leaved indeterminate variety, which means distinctive rounded leaves and continuous production for months after it first sets fruit. 2 to 4 ounce red fruits, slightly oval, appearing steadily and heavily, across a very long productive window. 55 days to maturity. That puts first fruit in early June from an April transplant. But here's what makes Stupice genuinely different from the other early varieties on this list. It doesn't stop. Most fast varieties are built for a concentrated heavy flush of fruit over a few weeks, and then they slow right down. Stupice is indeterminate. It keeps climbing, keeps flowering, keeps fruiting. That extended productive window is exactly how it contributes to the rolling harvest system this video is built around. Because it's indeterminate, Stupice needs support, a stake, a cage, or a trellis. For containers, it needs minimum 24 inches deep, full sun, water consistently once established. The mistake is the same one that shows up with subarctic plenty and several other varieties on this list. But it's worth stating again because it is so common. Excessive nitrogen. High nitrogen feeds push Stupice to produce extraordinary amounts of lush green growth. Beautiful plant. Almost no fruit. Switch to a low nitrogen, high potassium feed once the first flowers appear. That switch is the difference between a heavy harvest and a handsome bush. If this list is already giving you what you came for, real varieties, real numbers, real mistakes, hit subscribe. Every week we cover practical, research-backed growing information like this. It costs you nothing, and it means you don't miss what's coming next. Number 4 is Sungold. And if you have grown this variety before, you already know. If you haven't, pay attention, because this one changes the way you think about cherry tomatoes. Sungold fruits are golden orange, not yellow, not red. A warm, deep apricot color that makes them instantly identifiable in any garden. About an inch wide. Half an ounce per fruit. Produced in long, cascading trusses that just keep coming. The brick sugar rating on Sungold, a measure of dissolved sugars in the fruit, is consistently among the highest of any cherry tomato tested in horticultural trials. This variety was developed by the Takeda Seed Company in Japan and introduced to British and American gardeners in 1992. It is a hybrid, which means you cannot save seed and expect the same plant. But the flavor consistency you get from that hybrid breeding is extraordinary. 60 days to maturity. The color is the ripeness indicator, and this is critical. Sungold does not turn red, it turns orange. Gardeners who wait for it to go red wait for something that never happens. When those fruits reach that deep golden apricot color, they are ripe. Pick them. The plant is indeterminate. It will keep producing until frost, making it one of the strongest contributors to a long rolling harvest. Container size, minimum 24 inches deep and 18 inches wide. Full sun, consistent watering, especially as fruits approach ripeness. Which brings us to the mistake. Sungold's skin is thin. That thinness is part of why the flavor is so exceptional. There's nothing between you and the juice. But when watering suddenly surges, a downpour after a dry spell, or inconsistent hand watering, the fruits absorb water faster than the skin can expand and they split. Cracked Sungold still taste the same, but they deteriorate fast and attract insects. The fix: mulch deeply around the root zone to buffer moisture swings and establish a consistent watering schedule. Don't let the soil dry out completely and then flood it. What country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you've grown Sungold before, tell me what you thought. I want to know how it performed in your climate. Variety 5 is Bloody Butcher, and the name alone stops people in their tracks. Deep red, 2 to 4 ounce fruits, growing in clusters, on an indeterminate plant that keeps going all season. It's an American heirloom, actually bred by a gentleman named Tom Wagner and introduced through the Netherlands in 1998, and it performs especially well in cooler northern climates. It's worth flagging for UK viewers. Bloody Butcher is available from a handful of specialist UK seed companies, but if you're in Britain, you may need to search a bit harder for it than the US and Canadian gardeners watching this. Worth the effort. 55 to 65 days to maturity. That range is real. Conditions affect it. In a warm spring, it comes in fast. In a cooler one, give it a few extra days. But here's the thing most people don't expect: the flavor. Most early season, fast-maturing tomatoes make a trade-off. They give you speed, and they sacrifice complexity of taste. Bloody Butcher doesn't do that. It has real depth for an early variety, something that separates it clearly from a lot of the other fast-maturing tomatoes that taste more like ambition than actual tomato. It needs a 5-gallon minimum container if you're growing in pots. Indeterminate, so it needs staking. Full sun. Consistent watering. Here is the mistake with Bloody Butcher, and it's specific to climate. This variety is susceptible to early blight in warm, humid conditions. Gardeners in the mid-Atlantic states, the deep south of the U.S., and humid UK summers are most at risk. What makes the mistake so easy to make is that the plant looks perfectly healthy right up until it doesn't. Blight moves fast once it takes hold. The prevention is simple, but requires commitment. Stake the plant properly to maximize airflow around the foliage, water at the base rather than overhead, and remove any yellowing lower leaves before they become a problem. Do not wait until you see the characteristic dark lesions to act. The next variety on this list is one of the most widely grown early tomatoes in America for a very good reason. And it's the only one on this entire list that gives you a full-size slicing tomato at early variety speed. I'll be right back to it. Early Girl. 50 to 52 days to maturity. 4 to 6 ounces. A solid, full-size, red slicing tomato. That combination should not be possible at this speed, and yet, here we are. Early Girl was introduced by Burpee Seeds in 1962, and more than 60 years later it is still one of the most widely grown tomatoes in the United States. When a variety survives that long, it's not nostalgia keeping it alive. It's performance. The distinction that matters. This is the only genuinely fast variety on this list that gives you slicing tomato fruit. Every other early variety on here is either a cherry, a small salad tomato, or a small to medium fruit. Early Girl gets you the kind of tomato that fills a sandwich, that goes on a plate in thick slices with olive oil, that feeds a family from 1 or 2 fruits, at the speed of an early variety. That is a meaningful difference. Indeterminate. It needs staking, and it will keep producing if you let it. Container minimum, 5 gallons, though bigger is better for root development. It can tolerate temperatures down to 40 degrees Fahrenheit before production slows, which makes it a solid choice for anyone in a climate with unpredictable late spring cold snaps. Full sun. The mistake with Early Girl is one I have seen ruin otherwise perfect plants. Too much nitrogen. It shows up again and again with this variety specifically. Excess nitrogen causes rampant vegetative growth. The plant gets enormous, lush, absolutely beautiful, and starts producing so many leaves that the energy needed for fruit development simply isn't there. Ripening slows. Rot increases. Gardeners fertilize more because the plant looks like it needs something, which makes the problem worse. The solution, once the plant has established itself in the ground, ease off nitrogen. High potassium feed once flowers appear. Patience after that. If the mistakes we've covered for these first 6 varieties have already saved you from something you would have done, hit subscribe. This channel covers early varieties, container growing, long season harvests. If that's your world, this is the right place to be. Moskvich. The name means one from Moscow, and that origin is the whole story. Developed in the early 1970s at the N.I. Vavilov Institute of Plant Industry in Moscow, in the former Soviet Union, bred specifically to produce reliably in the short, cold growing season of Russia. 60 days to maturity. And at that speed, what you get is a 4 to 6 ounce, deep red, smooth, globe-shaped fruit that is crack-resistant and cold-productive. 2 problems that quietly destroy most early varieties, solved in a single plant. Cracking is the hidden enemy of heavy harvests. Most tomatoes crack when rainfall and watering are inconsistent, especially in summer when rains can be heavy and intermittent. A cracked tomato doesn't store, doesn't transport, and deteriorates fast. Moskvich's crack resistance comes directly from its Soviet breeding. A tomato that splits in a Russian summer is a tomato that doesn't feed anyone. That selection pressure over generations built genuine durability into the skin. Moskvich is semi-determinate, somewhere between determinate and full indeterminate in habit. It needs support, but it won't grow as tall as a fully indeterminate variety. Container. Minimum 15 to 20 gallons, or 24 inches deep in a container. Tolerates cooler temperatures down to about 39 degrees Fahrenheit before production stalls. Full sun. The mistake with Moskvich is pruning. Because some sources list it as indeterminate, gardeners who are used to pruning indeterminate varieties go at it the same way, removing suckers aggressively, clearing out growth systematically. But Moskvich is semi-determinate. That means heavy pruning directly reduces your yield. You're not training a vine. You're cutting away potential fruit. Let it grow more naturally than you would a full, indeterminate variety. Minimal intervention. Stake it for support and leave most of the growth intact. This is a variety people sleep on. Where are you growing? Comment below, state, zone, or country, and tell me if Moskvich has ever been in your garden. Siberian. Developed from seeds obtained in 1975 from a Soviet woman who was touring Canada. Seeds reportedly being trialed in Siberia at the time. The story sounds like it belongs in a Cold War novel, but the variety itself is entirely real, and what it does is remarkable. Determinate, low-growing, producing clusters of bright red, 4 to 6 ounce fruits. And here's the number. This variety has been documented setting fruit at temperatures as low as 38 degrees Fahrenheit, 3 degrees Celsius. That is below what almost any other tomato variety on the market will tolerate. At temperatures where other plants drop their blossoms and wait, Siberian keeps going. 62 days to maturity from transplant. An April planting brings you first fruit by late June. Because it's determinate, it doesn't stretch endlessly upward. It sets its fruit over a concentrated window, which is a very different contribution to a staggered harvest than Sungold or Stupice make. This variety is your insurance for the cold nights of early summer when an unexpected temperature drop threatens everything else. 5-gallon minimum for containers. Full sun, but adaptable. Consistent watering throughout. The mistake most gardeners make with Siberian is treating its cold tolerance as an invitation to plant it out too early, and then overcompensating when the weather turns. Because this variety is famous for setting fruit at 38 degrees Fahrenheit, people assume it is essentially frost-proof and rush it into the ground before nights have stabilized, then panic when cold snaps arrive and pile on protective covering, extra water, and supplemental feeding to help it through. What actually happens is that Siberian in cool conditions needs almost nothing from you. It was bred to handle it. The overwatering and overfeeding that anxious gardeners apply in cold snaps is what stresses the plant, not the temperature itself. Trust the breeding. Get it in the ground once your last frost date has passed, and then leave it alone when the cold comes back. Siberian does not need rescuing. It needs space to do what 70 years of Russian selection pressure prepared it to do. The next variety might be the UK's best-kept growing secret, but if you're in the US or Canada, what I'm about to tell you might send you searching online. Stay with me. Red alert. And if you garden in the United Kingdom, you may already be nodding, because this one has a dedicated following. If you're in the US or Canada, fair warning. Red alert is a UK variety at heart, widely available through major British seed companies, but harder to find on the western side of the Atlantic. You may need to source it online, but it is worth the search. 50 to 55 days from transplant. Bush habit, determinate, marketed specifically as a no-staking tomato. Small to medium red cherry fruits, about 38 millimeters in diameter, growing in heavy clusters on a compact plant. In a good UK summer, this variety is ripe in July from a spring transplant. That is early. That is meaningfully early for a British gardener accustomed to waiting. The container requirement is one of the most accessible on this list, a minimum pot size of 30 centimeters, around 12 inches, which means window boxes, patio pots, and balcony containers that wouldn't suit most of the other varieties. Here can work perfectly well for Red Alert. This is a plant designed to be manageable. The mistake, and this one is genuinely counterintuitive. Despite being marketed as a no-staking variety, the sheer weight of the fruit clusters, when a Red Alert plant is really performing, will break unsupported branches. The plant is compact, yes. The marketing says no staking required. But a heavily loaded Red Alert in a good season is more weight than those branches handle well on their own. Put in simple support, even just a few short stakes, when the fruit starts swelling. You will lose branches if you don't. The plant tells you it doesn't need help, and then proves otherwise. For UK viewers especially. Where in the country are you? Mention your region in the comments. I want to know how early your summers get productive enough for Red Alert to really shine. Manitoba. And the name tells you exactly where this variety comes from and who it was built for. Developed by the Morden Experimental Farm in Manitoba, Canada, introduced in 1956. Morden's specific mandate was producing varieties that worked for southern Canadian and northern U.S. gardeners, people with climates that can be brutal in both directions. Hard winters, short summers, unpredictable springs. Manitoba was bred as a guaranteed producer for exactly those gardeners. 58 days to maturity, determinate. Bright red fruits, slightly flattened globe shape, around 6 ounces each, a proper, substantial tomato. Juicy, productive, reliable. This is a variety that delivers a full-sized fruit at an honest early season speed, which is rarer than the seed catalogs would have you believe. Container size, 10 gallons, or roughly 40 centimeters wide and 40 centimeters deep. It can be transplanted out once nighttime temperatures are reliably above 45 degrees Fahrenheit, 7 degrees Celsius, which in most northern U.S. and Canadian growing regions aligns with late April or early May planting out. Full sun. The mistake with Manitoba is a two-part risk that hits in the middle to end of the season. The first is flea beetle. Manitoba is particularly vulnerable, and flea beetles can do real damage to the foliage in the second half of summer. Row cover early and insecticidal approaches if you see them moving in. The second is blight. Manitoba responds to even minor blight infections with very fast leaf loss. 1 or 2 affected leaves becomes a stripped plant with alarming speed. Inspect regularly. Remove affected material at the first sign. Don't wait for it to spread before acting. This isn't a variety that gives you warning time. The final variety on this list might be the most satisfying one I've saved for last, because the name itself is the promise. And it delivers. 4th of July. Bred by Burpee, available widely in the US and Canada. The name is not an accident. Planted in April, this variety is designed to have ripe fruit in your hands by the 4th of July. Under 50 days to maturity. 49 days in most conditions. One of the fastest indeterminate varieties in existence. 4-ounce, bright red fruits in clusters, reliable and genuinely flavorful for a variety at this speed. The fact that it's indeterminate is significant. Most of the fastest varieties on this list are determinate. They set their fruit in a concentrated burst and then slow down. 4th of July keeps producing after first harvest. It is simultaneously one of the fastest tomatoes you can grow and one of the longest contributors to a rolling season. That is a rare combination, and it's the reason it closes this list rather than opens it. The container minimum is 18 inches in diameter, full sun. If temperatures drop below 50 degrees Fahrenheit once it's in the ground, row cover or cloches protect the blossoms. Here is the practical mistake, and it is simple. 4th of July splits in heavy rain. It also doesn't transplant well from community trays. The root disturbance from moving it out of a crowded tray sets it back in a way that solo cell starting doesn't. Start this one in individual cells or small pots. And once it's in the ground and producing, maintain consistent watering. Even moisture levels throughout the growing cycle is what prevents the cracking. Let it dry out and then flood it, and you'll lose fruit at the peak of ripeness, when the skin is thinnest and the pressure inside the fruit is highest. Even and consistent. That's all it takes. 11 varieties. Let's come back to where we started. That image of the loaded garden. Heavy clusters. Fruit practically falling into your hands. A kitchen bench full to overflowing. That is not a fantasy. That is what these 11 varieties planted in April look like in high summer. And it doesn't end in high summer. Subarctic Plenty and Stupice will have already given you weeks of fruit by the time Moskvich and Siberian hit their stride. 4th of July, Sungold, and Early Girl keep producing through to the end of the season. Stack them, stagger them. Grow 2 or 3 from different maturity windows, and you have something that most gardeners never achieve. A harvest that starts in June and runs to first frost. That is the all year round this video promised you. Not magic. A system. 11 varieties. Selected for speed and cold climate reliability, planted in the right window. April is that window. It is open right now. Every week you wait is fruit you won't eat. Weeks of harvest you hand back to the season. The varieties are on this list. The information is in your head. The only thing left is the decision to actually plant them. If this video gave you something real, subscribe. We cover practical, research-backed growing information every week. Varieties, techniques, mistakes to avoid. If you want more of this, the subscribe button is the easiest way to make sure you don't miss it. And leave a comment. Tell me which variety you're planting first this April, and tell me your state, your zone, or your country. That single comment takes you 10 seconds, and it tells me exactly where to focus next. Your growing situation is different from someone in Scotland or Manitoba or Michigan. Tell me where you are. I'm reading everyone. Now go plant something.